AITA for refusing to give my sister access to my house, even though she claims I'm being unfair. So I, 32F, have a situation with my younger sister, Lily, 28F, that's been brewing for a while and has now escalated to a full-blown argument. And I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong here. I'll try to give the full picture. A little context first. Lily and I have always had a complicated relationship. We were close as kids, but as we got older, differences in lifestyle and priorities caused some tension. I work in tech, live alone in a condo I bought 3 years ago, and value my privacy highly. Lily, on the other hand, is much more social and laid back. She's struggled financially for the past few years due to a combination of bad luck and poor money management, and she's currently living with her boyfriend, which has not been the most stable setup. About 2 months ago, Lily called me out of the blue and asked if she could drop by whenever to hang out or even just stay a night if she needed a break from her apartment. She made it sound casual, like it wouldn't be a big deal, but I felt uneasy. My condo is my personal space. I enjoy having control over my environment, especially when it comes to who stays there. I also travel frequently for work, and the idea of her just showing up unannounced made me anxious. I told her that I wasn't comfortable with the idea of her coming over whenever she wanted and that I preferred to plan visits in advance. She brushed it off and said I was being overly controlling. Fast forward a couple of weeks. Lily lost her job unexpectedly and started pressuring me more. She said she had nowhere else to go for a few days while she figured things out, and that it would be just temporary. I explained that while I sympathized, my condo isn't a hotel, and I have responsibilities and routines that would be disrupted. I offered to help her find short-term housing options, offered to lend some money if necessary, and even offered to cook meals together at my place if she wanted company. But she insisted she really needed a place to stay. At this point, I stood firm and told her no. Things escalated when she came over unannounced one afternoon while I was working from home. She knocked on my door, and when I didn't answer immediately, she let herself in. I had forgotten to lock the door because I wasn't expecting anyone. She immediately started unloading her problems and assumed she could stay. I asked her again to leave, but she sat down and started crying, saying I was being a bad sister and that I didn't care about her well-being. I called her boyfriend to come get her, which she found humiliating, and she left, but the argument continued over text for days. Her main point is that because I'm financially stable and own my home, I should be willing to let her use my place whenever she needs. She claims I'm selfish and unkind, and that my refusal shows a lack of love. She also brought up the fact that I've stayed at her apartment before when I visited for a weekend, which she thinks somehow obligates me to reciprocate indefinitely. I tried explaining that staying somewhere for a weekend is not the same as moving in for an indefinite period, but she doesn't seem to understand the difference. The situation has gotten worse because our parents are involved. They think I'm being harsh and have been sending me texts like, family should support each other no matter what, and you should help Lily in her time of need. I respect my parents' point of view, but I also feel like boundaries are important. I've always been willing to help financially or emotionally in ways that don't disrupt my personal life, but this feels like crossing a line. I also worry that if I let her stay now, it could set a precedent where she expects to just show up whenever she faces any problem, which I can't accommodate long-term. Recently, she's been posting passive-aggressive messages on social media, hinting that I'm turning my back on family and only care about myself. Mutual friends are starting to take sides, and it's making me anxious. I haven't responded publicly because I don't want to escalate it further, but privately I've been standing my ground. I also tried to compromise by suggesting a stay for one night, with advance notice and ground rules, but she refused to accept that as sufficient. I do feel guilty because she is my sister and she's going through a hard time, but I also feel like my home is my sanctuary and I have the right to decide who can stay. I'm not refusing to help her in other ways. I've offered to help her financially, emotionally, and even practically with temporary accommodations, but she refuses anything that doesn't involve living at my place. I'm worried I might be coming across as cold or unfeeling, but at the same time, I don't think I'm wrong for wanting to maintain my boundaries. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister have open access to my home, even though she says I'm being unfair and selfish. If you enjoyed the video, Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded my fiancé from the guest list. I've, 28F, been with my fiancé, Ryan, 30M, for almost 4 years. Ryan is great, supportive, funny, and very family-oriented, but he has some social anxieties that make large events difficult for him. Despite this, he always makes an effort to participate in family gatherings. My sister, Jenna, 32F, has always been the golden child in our family, and she's very particular about how events are organized. She's extremely close to my parents, and growing up, it often felt like my achievements and milestones were overshadowed by hers. I've never had a huge issue with it, but over the years, I've noticed a pattern in how she organizes family events. When Jenna got engaged last year, I was genuinely happy for her. I offered to help with wedding planning, and she initially seemed grateful. As the months went by, I noticed that she was making decisions without consulting me, even though I was involved in planning several parts of the bridal party. When she finally sent out the official guest list, I was shocked to see that Ryan's name was missing. I assumed it was a mistake, so I reached out to her directly to clarify. Her response was blunt. She didn't want Ryan at the wedding because he might make things awkward, and she wanted the day to be perfect and stress-free. I was furious. I tried explaining that Ryan isn't awkward in a disruptive way. He's polite, quiet, and generally stays out of drama. I reminded her of all the times he had helped family members without being asked, like helping my mom set up for Thanksgiving or taking my dad to doctor appointments. She wouldn't budge, saying she had already made her decision and that she wanted to keep her wedding comfortable. I brought this up with my parents, hoping they might mediate. My dad agreed with Jenna, saying that weddings are stressful and everyone has the right to decide who is invited. My mom, however, seemed upset that I was hurt and asked me to at least consider attending. I told them both that I wouldn't go without Ryan because it felt wrong to celebrate a day that excluded the person I'm building a life with. They accused me of being dramatic and said I was overreacting. My parents even hinted that not attending would make me seem selfish to the rest of the family. I tried talking to Jenna again, explaining that our relationship is serious, and excluding Ryan sends a message that she doesn't respect him or our relationship. She accused me of guilt-tripping her and said that my choice was making her wedding about me, which I think is unfair because my concern isn't about me. It's about Ryan being excluded. We've been arguing for weeks. Some family members have reached out to me privately saying they understand why I feel the way I do, but others think I should just suck it up for one day. My fiancé has been incredibly patient and supportive. He doesn't want to cause a fight, and he's told me he's okay with me going alone if I choose, but I can't imagine being there without him. It feels like I'd be attending a celebration that dismisses my relationship. A few friends have told me I'm justified, but I keep second-guessing myself because I don't want to escalate family tension. On the other hand, I feel like if I compromise, I'd be compromising my own values and relationship for someone else's perfectionist vision. My sister has even implied that if I don't come, our relationship will be permanently strained, and that I'm choosing my boyfriend over family. That hurt because it frames the situation as if I'm being unreasonable, when all I'm asking is for fairness and inclusion. I'm stuck between wanting to maintain peace and feeling like I'm being asked to accept disrespect toward my fiancé. The wedding is in 2 weeks, and I haven't responded to her last text. I feel anxious every time I think about it, and I'm worried that this decision could affect family dynamics for years. I also feel guilty because my parents are disappointed in me, and part of me wonders if I'm overreacting. But the idea of celebrating my sister's special day without Ryan makes my stomach twist. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she wouldn't invite my fiancé? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of how she treated my fiancé? I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Jessica, 33F. Growing up, she was the golden child in our family. Top grades, perfect manners, and always the center of attention. I was quieter, more introverted, and never really felt like I could measure up. Despite this, we had our moments, and I always tried to support her, even when I felt overshadowed. When I started dating my fiancé, Daniel, 31M, things felt different. He's kind, thoughtful, and not easily intimidated by people's egos, which I appreciated, especially since my family can be, well, intense. Daniel and I got engaged about a year ago. We shared the news with Jessica, expecting at least a polite congratulations, but instead, she made a few offhand comments that struck me as weirdly hostile. She said things like, "Wow, finally someone is willing to settle for you, and I hope he knows what he's getting into." At first, I brushed it off as her being awkward, but over time, her remarks escalated. She would joke about how Daniel wasn't good enough for me in front of friends and even my parents, calling him boring or unambitious. I tried to defend him, but every time I did, she would either laugh it off or act offended that I was being too sensitive. When it came time to plan her wedding, I tried to maintain civility. She asked me to be a bridesmaid, which I initially accepted because I wanted to support her and preserve some semblance of family unity. However, as the planning went on, it became increasingly clear that she didn't want me there as an equal participant. She made subtle but consistent efforts to exclude Daniel, like insisting I come to dress fittings alone or making comments about how she didn't see the point in including him in pre-wedding events. When I expressed that it made me uncomfortable and that it felt unfair to Daniel, she would say I was overreacting and making it about him. The breaking point came about 2 months before her wedding. She invited Daniel to what was supposed to be a small family dinner to discuss final wedding details. I thought maybe she wanted to reconcile or at least acknowledge him. But when we arrived, she spent the entire evening criticizing Daniel's career choices, financial situation, and even his hobbies. She made a few pointed jokes about how he would never measure up to her circle of friends, who were all extremely high-achieving. I was humiliated and furious, and I told her I would not tolerate him being treated this way in my family. She shrugged it off and said I needed to learn to take a joke, and that Daniel was too sensitive. After that night, I began to seriously consider whether I wanted to be involved in her wedding at all. I tried discussing it with my parents, hoping they would step in and support me, but they told me that Jessica has always been a bit dramatic and that I should pick my battles. They also said that attending the wedding, regardless of the circumstances, was more important than defending my fiancé. I felt isolated because it seemed like everyone was prioritizing Jessica's feelings over the way she was treating Daniel. Fast forward to a week before her wedding. She sent me a message essentially guilt-tripping me about not confirming my attendance yet. She said things like, "I thought you were closer to me than this, and I don't understand why you're making it about him." I responded honestly that I couldn't go if Daniel wasn't welcome as an equal guest, and that I couldn't support her wedding while she was actively undermining my relationship. Her response was harsh. She called me selfish, accused me of trying to ruin her special day, and told me that if I didn't attend, I was no longer welcome at family events. I feel awful because I know weddings are important, but I also feel like attending would mean sacrificing my own dignity and the respect of my relationship. Daniel has been incredibly supportive, telling me that he doesn't want me to feel forced into a toxic situation. I also can't shake the feeling that Jessica's behavior is part of a long-standing pattern and that attending would just reinforce that I accept being treated this way. Some extended family have tried to convince me to go, saying it's just one day and that family obligations matter more than personal grievances. My parents are particularly upset and have hinted that my decision is selfish, which makes me feel guilty. But I also can't shake the sense that going to her wedding under these circumstances would be a betrayal to myself and to Daniel. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of the way she treats my fiancé. I feel like I'm caught between family loyalty and protecting my relationship, and I'm not sure which side I should prioritize. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay in my house after he lost his job. I, 28F, live in a moderately sized city in the U.S. and have been renting a 2-bedroom apartment for about 3 years. I've always been pretty independent, and while my parents and siblings are close to me, I rarely let family or friends stay with me for long periods because I like having my space. Recently, I got into a situation that's caused a huge rift in my family, and I'm genuinely unsure if I'm the asshole here. My younger sister, Sarah, 24F, has been dating her boyfriend, Ryan, 27M, for about 2 years. Ryan used to have a stable job, and things seemed fine between them, but in the past month, he was laid off due to company downsizing. Sarah immediately wanted him to move in with me temporarily while he looked for work. I want to clarify that Sarah didn't ask me in person. She sent me a text that basically said, "Hey, Ryan lost his job and can't pay rent. Can he stay with you for a few weeks?" I was caught off guard. I had never really met Ryan before. I'd only interacted with him a handful of times at family gatherings. I know Sarah is really close to him and wants to help, but I don't feel comfortable letting someone I barely know into my personal space, especially without any discussion in person. I told her that I wasn't comfortable with the idea, and that while I wanted to support them, I couldn't have him living with me. I suggested instead that he look into short-term sublets or maybe a friend of his who could take him in temporarily. Sarah didn't respond right away, which I assumed meant she understood. Things escalated a few days later when Sarah came over to my apartment unannounced with Ryan. She assumed I'd change my mind if they came in person. Ryan seemed nice enough, polite, and clearly stressed about losing his job. He didn't push to move in right away, but Sarah asked if he could at least stay for a few nights. I told them both that I wasn't comfortable with that my apartment is small, and that I need my own space. Sarah got upset and said I was being cruel and turning my back on family in need. I told her I still cared about her and wanted to support them, but having him stay in my apartment wasn't the way I could do it. She left upset, and Ryan followed a bit reluctantly. Over the next week, I tried to stay out of it, but my parents got involved. Apparently, Sarah had told them that I was being heartless and kicking family to the curb. My parents called me, saying I should be helping, and that this is what family is for. I explained my side, that I don't feel comfortable letting someone I barely know stay in my home, that I have my own boundaries, and that I was still willing to help in other ways. They didn't seem to understand and hinted that I was prioritizing my comfort over family loyalty. After that, Sarah started posting passive-aggressive stuff on social media about people who refuse to help loved ones in tough times. I didn't respond, but I felt terrible because I do care about her, and I could tell she was genuinely stressed about Ryan's situation. I offered to help by sending Ryan job postings, helping him with his resume, and even offering to pay for a couple of nights in a cheap motel if needed. Sarah said that wasn't enough and accused me of choosing convenience over compassion. The tension has now reached a point where my parents are subtly criticizing me every time we speak, and family events are uncomfortable. I understand that Ryan losing his job is tough, and Sarah wants to help him, but I feel like my boundaries are being completely ignored. Letting a semi-stranger stay in my home for an indefinite period just because he's dating my sister feels like a huge invasion of my personal life. I've thought about compromising, like letting him stay one night or offering a couch to crash on, but even that feels uncomfortable and temporary fixes might just turn into weeks. I also worry that if I let him stay, it could cause problems with my apartment lease or with my landlord, and I'm not in a position to handle that stress. I can't tell if I'm being unreasonable here. On one hand, family is important and I want to help, but on the other hand, I have to live in my space every day, and it's not like Ryan is homeless without any options. He has other friends, extended family, and local resources he can use. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay in my apartment after he lost his job, even though I offered alternative ways to help. Character count, 6,438 if you want. I can also write a second version that leans more dramatic and emotionally intense in the style of the most viral AITA stories that go viral on Reddit. That version would push it closer to 7,000 characters with more family conflict and moral tension. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to take care of my sister's kids after she moved abroad, even though my family is upset at me for it. I, 32M, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who has always been a bit impulsive and tends to make decisions without thinking through the consequences. Growing up, our relationship was fine, typical sibling stuff, but as adults, we've had a few disagreements, mostly around responsibility. My parents live in the same city as me, and Emily had always been a bit of a free spirit, moving from one city to another for work or school and leaving little consistency behind. About 6 months ago, Emily called me out of the blue. She told me she had been offered a really good opportunity to work abroad. Think dream job, big promotion, fully funded relocation. But there was a catch. She couldn't take her 2 kids, ages 7 and 4, with her immediately because of visa restrictions and schooling. She said she was looking for a temporary solution and wanted me to take care of them for at least a year until she got settled and could bring them over. Now, I need to clarify my life situation. I live alone in a decent-sized apartment. My job is demanding, often requiring late nights and occasional weekend work. I also have a social life that includes hobbies, travel, and a close-knit group of friends. I'm not against children. I love my nieces, and I babysit occasionally, but I have never lived with children full-time, and I definitely have never been responsible for 2 on my own. When Emily first asked, I said something along the lines of, I don't think I can commit to a full year with the kids. Maybe short visits or weekends. She got upset and told me that she had no one else who could help and that my parents were too old to handle it. She kept stressing how important this job was and how much it meant for her family's future. I tried to reason with her. This is a huge responsibility. I can't just put my life on hold like that. It's not fair to me or to the kids. She accused me of being selfish and said that family should stick together. I decided to consult my parents. I expected them to be on my side, at least partially. Instead, my mom started crying and said I was being cruel and that the kids needed me. My dad said it was my duty as their uncle to help. Emily then called several times to try to guilt-trip me. She used lines like, I would never ask if it weren't urgent, and I thought you loved your nieces. Every conversation ended in me getting frustrated and her hanging up on me, crying, or threatening to cut off contact. After several weeks of this back and forth, I made a firm decision. I would not take care of the kids full-time. I tried to help in other ways. I offered to pay for part-time daycare, arrange for tutors, and even suggested she look into local temporary childcare services near her new city. I promised to spend weekends with the kids and take them on occasional trips, but I could not give up my entire life for a year. Emily didn't take it well. She accused me of abandoning my family and said I was choosing my own comfort over my niece's well-being. She made a post on social media implying I was uncaring and greedy, which caused a lot of extended family members to reach out and pressure me. My parents are still upset. They think I am morally in the wrong, though they haven't completely cut me off. I have been called everything from selfish to cruel. Some friends have said I'm setting boundaries and that it's reasonable not to uproot my life for someone else's career. Others have said I should reconsider because family comes first. I'm starting to feel like I am the villain here, even though I genuinely think that forcing me to do this would have been bad for both me and the kids. They deserve a stable home with a caregiver who can consistently meet their needs, and I can't provide that right now. I feel guilty sometimes, but I also feel like if I had agreed, I would have ended up resenting Emily and the kids, which would have been toxic for everyone. I still want a relationship with my nieces, and I plan to continue seeing them, but under circumstances that don't completely derail my life. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to take care of my sister's kids full-time while she works abroad, even though my family is upset and my sister is furious. AITA for refusing to give my sister's ex-boyfriend a second chance at my wedding after he caused chaos the first time. So, I, 29F, am getting married in about 6 months. My fiancé, Daniel, 31M, and I have been together for 5 years, and things have been amazing. Planning a wedding during the pandemic has been stressful, but we've managed to keep it mostly under control. One thing that's been a constant headache is dealing with my family, particularly my sister, Megan, 32F, and her history with her ex-boyfriend, Tyler, 33M. A bit of background. Megan and Tyler were together for 6 years. For most of that time, Tyler was a controlling, manipulative, and honestly kind of aggressive guy. He had a temper that would flare over small things, and Megan often confided in me about how stressful things were, but she always came back to him. They broke up last year, and it was messy. Tyler publicly humiliated her during their breakup and even tried to blame me for turning her against him, which I had no part in. He blocked me online, sent passive-aggressive messages to our family group chat, and generally caused a lot of drama. I've been avoiding him ever since. Fast forward to last month. Megan approached me with a request that honestly shocked me. She said she wanted Tyler to come to my wedding. Her reasoning was that it had been a year since their breakup, and she thought it would be healing for both of them if he was included. She kept going on about how he had changed, how people do change, and how it would be a kind gesture to invite him. I was immediately hesitant, but I tried to remain calm. I explained to her that Tyler's past behavior wasn't something I could just overlook, and honestly, I didn't feel safe around him. I reminded her of how he had treated her, myself, and even our parents during their relationship and breakup. Megan told me that she had talked to him recently, and he seemed really remorseful, and that he promised he wouldn't cause any trouble. She said she didn't want to exclude him when he had supposedly changed. I told her that a wedding is not the time to test someone's supposed personal growth, especially when they had been abusive in the past. Megan started crying and accused me of being controlling and not letting her make her own decisions. She said I was being dramatic and that I should forgive and forget for the sake of family harmony. I tried to explain that it wasn't about holding grudges. It was about protecting myself, my fiancé, and my other guests from potential conflict. She said that if I didn't invite him, it would create a huge rift between us and that our parents would be upset too. I spoke to my parents about it, expecting them to side with me. My mom agreed that Tyler was unpredictable and shouldn't be invited, but my dad said he thought it would be mature of me to let bygones be bygones. He suggested maybe having Tyler attend, but staying far away from him personally, which I found ridiculous. I tried to explain to both of them that inviting someone who had publicly humiliated my sister and caused family drama didn't feel like forgiveness. It felt like inviting trouble. Megan then started guilt-tripping me heavily. She said that if I didn't invite Tyler, she might not come to the wedding at all. She said she didn't want to choose between family members, but she made it very clear she would side with Tyler. She even started telling other relatives about the situation, subtly framing me as unreasonable. Some distant relatives called me and asked me to try harder to include Tyler. I refused, which only made Megan more upset. Daniel has been 100% supportive of me. He said he couldn't imagine inviting someone like Tyler to our wedding, and he agrees with my reasoning completely. Our friends also support me, saying it's my wedding and my safety and comfort come first. Despite this, the tension with my sister is growing. She refuses to talk to me calmly now, and some relatives are giving me side eyes at family events, asking why I'm making a big deal out of nothing. The latest development is that Megan told me she might publicly boycott the wedding if Tyler isn't invited. She keeps saying things like, if you really cared about me, you'd let him come, which is frustrating because it's not about me caring about her. It's about protecting myself and everyone else from someone who has a documented history of being abusive and disruptive. I know that the socially forgiving thing would be to let Tyler come, but I just can't do it. I'm not comfortable with him being around me, Daniel, or any of our friends and family, and frankly, I don't trust him not to create drama. I even consider having him come, but stay in a completely separate area. But Megan said that would be humiliating for him and not fair. At this point, I just don't know what to do. I feel like I'm being labeled the villain by my sister and some family members for putting my foot down, but I honestly don't think I should compromise my safety and sanity for the sake of someone who has proven they can't be trusted. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to give my sister's ex-boyfriend a second chance at my wedding, even though it's causing major tension with her and some family members. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after what he did to my dog. 28M. I've always been really close to my younger brother, Alex, 25M. We grew up in the same house, went to the same schools, and shared a lot of interests from gaming to hiking. However, over the past few years, our relationship has become increasingly strained, mostly because of our very different life choices and personalities. I'm a bit more cautious and sentimental. while Alex has always been more impulsive and reckless. This story really revolves around the last straw between us, and now I'm questioning if I'm being unreasonable. I've had my dog, Benny, for about 6 years. He's a golden retriever, and honestly, he's more like a member of my family than a pet. I rescued him from shelter when he was a puppy, and he's been with me through almost everything. Benny is calm, friendly, and well-behaved, but he can be anxious around strangers, especially in loud or chaotic situations. I've always made sure that he's comfortable, has space to retreat, and never put him in situations where he feels unsafe. A couple of months ago, Alex got engaged to his fiancée, Samantha. They've been together for about 2 years, and I'll admit, I've never fully liked her. She's charming on the surface, but tends to be very controlling and dismissive of other people's feelings. Alex, predictably, tends to side with her in disagreements, even if it makes him look unreasonable. When they started planning their wedding, they immediately decided they wanted it to be pet-friendly and invited everyone's pets. Initially, I thought it would be fine because I could make sure Benny was comfortable, but things quickly went downhill. They planned the ceremony outdoors in a small garden area with music, fireworks, and a huge sound system. My dog hates loud noises, and I repeatedly told Alex that this environment would terrify Benny. I suggested alternative arrangements, a quieter ceremony, a small indoor reception, or even asking me to leave Benny at home so he wouldn't be stressed. Alex brushed me off. He said, "It's just a dog. He'll be fine. Don't be so dramatic." I tried to explain that this wasn't about being dramatic, but about my dog's well-being. He laughed it off and said, "Benny's going to love it. He's part of the family now. You just need to chill." A week before the wedding, I went to help with some of the setup. I noticed fireworks being stored nearby, and I reminded Alex again about Benny's anxiety. That's when things escalated. Alex said, and I quote, "If Benny can't handle it, maybe he shouldn't be here. Maybe you should just leave him at home, or better yet, maybe he should just stay in the backyard for a bit." I told him firmly that putting Benny in a loud environment without proper precautions was cruel. On the day of the wedding, I arrived early to make sure Benny was settled and had a safe spot in a quiet area of the garden. I thought that would be enough. But right as the ceremony began, Alex and Samantha set off a small firework display because they wanted a dramatic entrance. Benny completely panicked. He ran out of the garden, and despite my attempts to catch him, he bolted into the street. A neighbor luckily caught him and brought him back safely, but he was traumatized. He wouldn't eat or drink for the rest of the day, and he trembled continuously for hours. I was furious. I told Alex that this was completely unacceptable. He didn't apologize. He said, "Relax, he'll get over it. Your acting like this is a catastrophe." I tried to explain how this could have caused real harm and how I felt personally responsible because I trusted him to respect my dog. He waved me off, saying, "It's a wedding. It's supposed to be fun. Stop being so uptight." After that day, I realized I didn't want to be around Alex or Samantha. I told Alex I wouldn't attend the reception. He blew up, texting me that I was selfish, dramatic, and ruining the family vibe. He said I was overreacting and that Benny was fine now, completely ignoring the emotional trauma he caused. I haven't spoken much to him since. My parents are divided. My mom says I should have gone for the sake of family unity, but my dad says Alex's actions were irresponsible and that I was right to prioritize Benny's well-being. Several friends and relatives have reached out, with some supporting me and others saying I overreacted. Now I'm wondering if I went too far. I feel like what Alex did was extremely irresponsible and showed a lack of respect, not just for me, but for my dog's safety and emotional state. On the other hand, I didn't attend the wedding, which was a major family event, and some people are saying I should have sucked it up. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after he set off fireworks that terrified my dog, despite me repeatedly warning him. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé attend my wedding after he treated my brother terribly at his engagement party. So, this all started about a year ago. My sister, Emily, got engaged to a guy named Mark. I have an older brother, Jason, and the four of us have always been pretty close. We've had our share of sibling squabbles, but nothing serious. When Emily announced the engagement, everyone was excited. I, of course, started thinking about my own wedding because I've been with my partner, Anna, for over 5 years, and we've been casually talking about getting married. But that's background. Here's where things start to go south. About 6 months ago, Emily and Mark decided to have a small engagement party at their apartment. Jason and I went, along with a few other family members and friends. From the moment we got there, Mark's attitude was off. It wasn't the normal kind of shy or awkward nervousness you see in a new fiancé around family. It was more aggressive and passive-aggressive. Within 15 minutes of arriving, he made a few jokes about Jason's career. Jason works in IT and has been at the same company for over a decade, implying that he's stagnant and boring. Jason is generally patient and doesn't take offense easily, but I could see him stiffen up. I tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, but Mark kept at it, making subtle digs about Jason's lack of ambition and comparing him to some of his own friends who supposedly have their life together. By this point, other guests were noticing, and it was awkward. Later in the night, things escalated. Emily had ordered a fancy cake from a local bakery, and Mark somehow decided it was funny to make a comment that Jason wouldn't even know real luxury if it hit him in the face. He made a few more comments along the same vein, and then, the moment that really got to me, he loudly said, "I guess some people are just doomed to mediocrity. Can't all be winners like me." Jason didn't say much, just laughed nervously, and eventually excused himself. I followed him outside, furious, but he told me to just let it go. Emily, meanwhile, seemed to be caught between laughing nervously and defending her fiancé, but she didn't actually confront him. Some other family members quietly expressed their discomfort, but no one really did anything. Fast forward a few months, and Emily was helping me plan my wedding. Anna and I have a fairly big wedding planned, about 200 guests, and we were in the stage of finalizing the guest list. Emily asked if she could have Mark on the list, and I said yes. Initially, I thought maybe he's just nervous. People behave differently in different situations. But then I realized that I was actively uncomfortable thinking about Mark being at my wedding. Not just uncomfortable, angry, and protective of my family. I spoke with Anna about it, and she agreed that based on what we'd seen at the engagement party, having him there could create tension, or worse, make someone feel humiliated. So I talked to Emily. I explained that I wasn't trying to punish her, but that I could not, in good conscience, invite Mark to my wedding. I reminded her of the engagement party, the comments he made about Jason, and the fact that he seemed to have a pattern of putting others down to make himself feel superior. I said that I loved her and wanted her at the wedding, but that Mark was not someone I could allow around my family on such an important day. I offered alternatives. She could come solo, or I could have a sit-down with Mark to see if he could demonstrate that he could be respectful. But I made it clear that my final answer was no if he wasn't willing to commit to basic civility. Emily reacted explosively. She accused me of being controlling, jealous, and unreasonable. She said that Mark had been stressed at the engagement party and that I was blowing things out of proportion. She started bringing up my own friends and distant relatives, claiming I was picking and choosing who was allowed to come. She even hinted that if I didn't invite Mark, she might not attend the wedding at all. I told her that was her choice, but I could not compromise on my wedding day being a respectful environment for my family and guests. She left the conversation in tears and hasn't really spoken to me much since. Our parents are split. Mom says she supports Emily and thinks I'm being harsh. Dad agrees with me, saying that Mark's behavior at the engagement party was unacceptable and that I'm within my rights to refuse him. Anna's family has been very supportive and agrees that it's better to avoid potential conflict than force it. Now, some extended family members are quietly saying that I might be the A** hole here because it's Emily's fiancé and that refusing him is extreme. I feel like my reasoning is solid. I'm not excluding someone for no reason. There's a history of toxic behavior. But Emily is genuinely hurt, and I can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is exactly the kind of boundary I need to set. The wedding is 6 months away, and tension is mounting. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé attend my wedding after how he treated my brother at his engagement party. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to help my brother with his get-rich-quick business after he moved back in with me. I, 34M, have lived in the same apartment for about 6 years now. I work as a software developer, and I've been careful with my finances. I'm the kind of person who budgets, saves, and avoids unnecessary risks. My younger brother, Jake, 28M, has always been a little more chaotic. He's intelligent, charming, and creative, but he's also prone to impulsive decisions, especially when money is involved. Jake had moved across the country about 4 years ago after college. During that time, he bounced between a series of short-term jobs, freelance gigs, and side hustles. Some of them worked, some didn't, but he never seemed to stick with anything long enough to actually save money. He always called me for advice, but he never really followed it. Over the years, I've gotten used to him living his own way while I live my steady life. Fast forward to last month. Jake called me in a panic. His latest apartment lease ended, he had drained his savings, and his new business venture failed within weeks of starting. He didn't have anywhere to go, and he begged me to let him crash at my place while he got back on his feet. I agreed, mostly because he's my brother and I felt bad. I made it clear from the start that this would be temporary and that he needed to contribute financially or help around the apartment. Things started okay. He stayed for a week, helping with groceries and cooking, but then he started to treat my apartment like his own. He left dishes in the sink for days, borrowed money without asking, and started inviting friends over without warning. I reminded him of the rules, but he would brush them off, claiming he was just trying to make a few bucks to get back on track. Here's where the real problem started. One evening, he sat me down and said he had a new business idea that he was sure would make him rich. He described some online scheme involving buying low-cost collectibles, flipping them, and creating hype through social media. The problem? He wanted me to invest $5,000 to get it off the ground and promised he would pay me back once it took off. He also asked me to help him set up the website, handle the logistics, and essentially work for free while he ran the operation. I laughed at first because, honestly, this sounded exactly like every one of his previous surefire plans that have failed miserably. I reminded him that I don't invest in high-risk schemes, especially ones I don't believe in, and that I have a mortgage and responsibilities. I told him I wouldn't give him money or work for free on a venture I don't trust. He immediately got defensive. He said I was unsupportive and that family is supposed to help each other, that I could afford it, and I was standing in the way of his dream. I explained again that helping him financially in this scenario would almost certainly lead to resentment or worse, him failing again and me losing my money. He stormed off to his room, and things have been tense since. Over the next week, he started passive-aggressively reminding me that I was holding him back and not a real brother for refusing to help. He also started asking friends to help him with his business idea, all while I was stuck cleaning up after him and handling most of the shared chores. I try to keep my cool and stick to my boundaries, but it's exhausting. The situation escalated when he posted a long social media story about his dream project and mentioned how his unsupportive brother refused to help him. Some mutual friends reached out to me, asking why I wasn't helping, which made me even more frustrated. I told them the truth. He was asking for money and labor for something that I thought was a bad idea and that I had my own responsibilities. The breaking point came 2 nights ago. I came home from work to find him had moved a bunch of inventory in my living room, claiming he needed space to store and organize it. There were boxes stacked everywhere, and I could barely get from my couch to my kitchen. When I confronted him, he said I was being dramatic and that I should trust him because this was going to be big. I told him I wouldn't allow my home to be turned into a warehouse for his hobby, and he yelled at me, calling me greedy and selfish. At this point, I set some firm boundaries. He has 1 week to either pay rent, contribute in a tangible way to the apartment, or move out. He said I was forcing him to fail, and that he couldn't believe I was choosing money over family. I feel bad because he's my brother and genuinely doesn't have a place to go, but I also feel like he has a pattern of relying on other people to bail him out while never taking responsibility. I've spoken to a few friends and some family members, and opinions are mixed. Some think I'm cold for refusing to help him financially, while others say I'm reasonable for not enabling his risky behavior. I want to help him, but I don't know how without putting myself in a situation that feels unsafe and stressful. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to invest in my brother's latest business scheme and asking him to respect the boundaries in my apartment. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she went behind my back and invited a controversial guest. So, this all started a few months ago when my sister, Lila, got engaged to her now fiancé, Matt. I'm 28F, she's 30F. Growing up, we were close, but our relationship has been strained in the last few years because she tends to act impulsively and expects everyone to accommodate her decisions. I'm going to try to give as much context as possible without making it about past grievances, but I feel it's important to understand the whole situation. When Lila got engaged, she asked me if I would be her maid of honor. I said yes, and I was excited about it. I love her, and I was looking forward to being part of her wedding. She then started talking about the budget, and I mentioned that I was willing to contribute to certain things, mainly the bridal shower, bachelorette party, and maybe some small wedding decorations. She seemed fine with this at first. Then things started escalating. A few weeks later, Lila told me she wanted a bigger role in funding the wedding and asked me to cover a portion of the overall costs. This included not only the bridal shower and bachelorette party, but also catering, venue, and floral arrangements. I was taken aback. I make a decent living, but I have student loans, rent, and other financial responsibilities. Covering a large portion of a wedding for someone else, even my sister, is not something I could do without putting myself in serious financial strain. I told her that I could contribute to the smaller, traditional maid of honor responsibilities, but that I could not fund a big portion of the wedding itself. She seemed upset, but accepted it. At least that's what I thought. Fast forward to about a month before the wedding. I was going through the final guest list with her to see who I might know, so I could help with seating arrangements. That's when I noticed someone on the list I had strong objections to. Her fiancé's father, Greg. For context, Greg has a history of making offensive remarks, some that are racist and sexist, and has been involved in multiple public incidents that I personally know about. He's not someone I would ever attend an event with willingly. I brought this up with Lila privately, saying that I was uncomfortable with Greg attending and asking if she could reconsider. She immediately became defensive and told me that he's family and that she loves him, and I should just deal with it. I try to explain that my objection isn't about controlling her wedding, but about my personal comfort and ethics. I also mentioned that if he were there, I might reconsider my financial contributions because I didn't want to support an event that included him. She got very upset and accused me of holding the wedding hostage. Then things got worse. A week later, I found out from my mom, who was helping with decorations, that Lila had already paid part of the deposit for Greg's attendance. She specifically requested the venue to accommodate him in a private section, even though she had promised me she would reconsider my concerns. When I confronted her about it, she admitted that she did it behind my back because she knew I would try to stop it. She said, and I quote, "I didn't want a negativity ruining my day." At this point, I told her I could no longer contribute financially. I said I was willing to help in ways that didn't involve spending money, like helping with planning, decorations, and coordinating the bridal shower and bachelorette party, but I could not fund a wedding where someone I strongly disapproved was being welcomed and celebrated. She blew up. She accused me of being selfish, controlling, and ruining the wedding for everyone. She also told our parents that I had refused to help out financially, painting me as the villain. My parents are upset with me because they believe that helping fund family events is a moral obligation, especially for siblings. They also keep reminding me that Lila is my sister, and I should put feelings aside for the sake of family. The situation has gotten so tense that Lila has stopped talking to me directly, and we're only communicating through text about logistics I am legally required to handle as maid of honor, like dress fittings. Friends I've confided in are split. Some say I'm justified for standing by my principles and finances, while others think I'm being dramatic and should just pay to avoid family drama. I don't want to go to the wedding if Greg is there, but I also don't want to completely abandon my sister. At the same time, I feel like she deliberately went behind my back and manipulated the situation, which makes me question how much I owe her now. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she invited someone I strongly object to, and went behind my back to include him. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she insulted me in front of the entire family. So, this is going to be long, but I'll try to make it as clear as possible. I, 28F, come from a moderately well-off family. My younger sister, Mia, 25F, has always been a bit entitled and competitive, but I've tried to maintain a good relationship with her. She got engaged about a year ago, and from the start, she had a very specific idea of how her wedding should look. She's the type who's been planning this since she was 15, and she made that clear to everyone who would listen. A little background on me. I work in marketing, I'm reasonably independent financially, and I've been saving for a house. My parents are supportive, but they aren't rich. They did say they would contribute to the wedding, but not cover everything. From the beginning, Mia made it clear that she expected me to chip in for the wedding, which I found odd. I asked how much she expected me to contribute, and she said, and I quote, "Enough to make it look like we're a family that has its act together. Don't make me explain it. You know what I can't live without." I was annoyed by the vague answer, but I agreed to give some money, thinking it was part of being a sibling. Over the next few months, Mia started sending me what she called suggested contributions, which were basically bills for decorations, flowers, and a ridiculous photographer who apparently only shoots with vintage lenses. Each time, she would casually mention that if I didn't pay, it would be awkward for the family. She also sent me messages about dress fittings and asked me to buy a dress from a boutique I couldn't afford. I set a strict budget for myself. I told her that I could contribute a reasonable amount toward the wedding, but I couldn't cover extravagant extras. At first, she agreed, but then, a few weeks ago, she called me to say she needed me to pay for her dress alterations and a large portion of the centerpieces. I reminded her of my budget, and she started crying on the phone, saying I didn't love her and that I was selfish for not supporting her dream wedding. I stayed calm and said I was sorry but couldn't stretch my finances further. Fast forward to last weekend, when the bridal shower happened. I decided to attend because I love my sister, even though I was dreading it. The event was hosted at a high-end venue, and everything looked like it belonged in a magazine. While I was talking to some distant relatives, Mia came up to me with this look of disdain. She whispered, loud enough for the people nearby to hear, "You know, it's really disappointing that you couldn't even contribute enough to make this day special. Some sister you are." I was shocked and embarrassed. I didn't know what to say, so I left the conversation and went to the restroom to collect myself. When I came back, a few of my cousins were staring at me awkwardly, and one of them mentioned that Mia had made a scene about my lack of contribution. I tried to shrug it off, but the rest of the night was tense. She continued dropping passive-aggressive comments, like telling me how she hoped I'd enjoy standing there in a cheap dress while everyone else is celebrating properly. By the end of the night, I was fuming. The next day, I told my parents I couldn't justify paying for any more of her wedding. I explained that I was happy to help in meaningful ways, like hosting a small part of the reception or helping with DIY projects, but I would not be giving her large sums of money she kept implying I owed her. My parents seemed torn but eventually sided with me, saying that Mia's behavior was unfair. Mia, of course, is furious. She sent me a long message calling me selfish, cold, and a terrible sister. She also said she would never forgive me and that our relationship is ruined. I tried to explain my side calmly, but she blocked me before I could respond further. Some family members think I overreacted and should have just given her the money to avoid drama. But honestly, I feel like she crossed a line by publicly shaming me and pressuring me for more than I could afford. I'm now stuck in a situation where her wedding is happening next month, and she refuses to speak to me. I don't plan on attending unless she apologizes for her behavior, because I don't want to be treated like an ATM in front of my entire family. I know this will upset my parents and some relatives, but I also don't want to be humiliated or enable her entitlement. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she publicly insulted me and pressured me beyond my means. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my family. So, this is going to be a long one because the situation is complicated, but I'll try to make it clear. I, 34F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F. Growing up, we were close, though. As we got older, our relationship got a little tense because our personalities are very different. I'm more laid back and family-oriented, whereas Emily has always been ambitious, dramatic, and occasionally manipulative. A few months ago, Emily got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 30M. I was genuinely happy for her, though I've always had some reservations about Mark because he can be controlling and has a temper. Emily insisted that I'd love him once I get to know him, which, honestly, was frustrating because I've seen red flags early on that I can't ignore. When Emily started talking about the wedding, she made it clear that she wanted it at my house. I live in a medium-sized suburban home with my husband, Jake, 36M, and our 2 kids. We have a big backyard and a relatively spacious living room, so it's suitable for a decent-sized event. At first, I thought, okay, it's my sister, I love her, and I can make this work. I started tentatively agreeing to host a small ceremony and reception here. Then things started to spiral. Emily started dictating every single detail. She told me she didn't want cheap decorations. She wanted professional catering, even though my husband and I enjoy cooking and could have managed a decent meal. And she wanted a tent set up in the backyard. I reminded her that while I could host, it's still my house, my children live here, and we also have to live our daily lives around the wedding. She brushed this off, saying, "It's my wedding. You just provide the space." I tried to compromise a bit. I said, "Okay, we can do it outside, but we have to set limits. I can't have 50 people running around my house. My kids need their routines, and I'm not comfortable covering huge expenses." That's when Emily snapped. She accused me of trying to ruin her dream wedding and told me that my kids are too messy and that she didn't want them around during the ceremony. At this point, I realized she wasn't just asking for help. She was demanding that I essentially put my life on hold to accommodate her. I told her calmly that I couldn't host the wedding if she was going to treat my family like this. She started texting me nonstop, alternating between guilt-tripping me. I can't believe my own sister wouldn't help me on the biggest day of my life, and insulting me. "You're so selfish, you only think about your boring little family." The breaking point came when she said something about my husband. She said, "I don't know why you even married Jake. He's not ambitious like Mark, and honestly, I don't see why anyone would put up with him. You can do better." I was furious. Not only did she insult my husband, but she also dragged my kids into the argument, implying that our family is pathetic compared to hers. I told her in no uncertain terms that I would not host her wedding. I also told her that if she wanted to attend, she could find a venue herself, and that I was done negotiating under insults. She responded by sending a long text saying that I'm destroying our relationship and that no one else in the family would understand why I'm being treated like this. She then started calling my parents, trying to get them to convince me to change my mind. My parents are mostly neutral, but they've expressed that they think Emily is overreacting and that I'm justified in saying no. Here's where things escalated further. Emily started posting passive-aggressive stuff on social media about how some siblings only care about themselves and family is supposed to support each other, right? My husband is furious. My kids are upset because they've picked up on the tension, and honestly, I feel drained. I've tried multiple times to explain to Emily that I love her and want to celebrate her wedding, but not at the cost of my family being insulted or my home being turned upside down. She refuses to listen. Some people in our family are now asking me if I'm overreacting and claiming that Emily is only expressing herself because wedding planning is stressful. I've told them that expressing frustration is fine, but insulting my family and demanding that we host an event under those conditions is not. I feel torn because I do love my sister, but I also feel like I have to protect my family from this toxicity. I know some people might say I'm selfish for not hosting my sister's wedding, but I think that's a different kind of selfishness, putting my family's well-being above unreasonable demands. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she insulted my family and refused to compromise. AITA for refusing to let my husband's sister live with us after she moved back to the city. I, 34F, have been married to my husband, Mark, 36M, for 8 years. We have a 5-year-old son, Alex, and we live in a 3-bedroom apartment in a city that's notoriously expensive. Both of us work full-time. Mark is a software engineer, and I'm a marketing manager. We manage okay financially, but we're not exactly rolling in cash, especially considering the high rent and childcare expenses. Mark has a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who has always been a bit of a free spirit. She's charming and fun, but also notoriously unreliable. She moves frequently, rarely holds a stable job for more than a few months, and often relies on family for help when things go south. About a month ago, Emily called Mark in a panic. She had lost her apartment due to unpaid rent, and her job fell through. She was moving back to our city and claimed she had nowhere else to go. She begged Mark to let her stay with us temporarily until she got back on her feet. Mark immediately called me to discuss it, but I wasn't convinced. I told him that with Alex's routines, our limited space, and the fact that Emily has a history of overstaying her welcome, I didn't think it was a good idea. I suggested helping her find a short-term sublet, a cheap studio, or even a local shelter if she needed immediate housing. I also offered to help her set up job interviews and update her resume. Mark said I was overreacting and insisted we could figure it out at home. After a few days of back and forth, Emily showed up at our apartment unannounced with a suitcase and a dog. She said she had no other options and expected to stay with us. I was upset because Mark had promised he would talk to me before making any final decisions, but now it felt like he was pressuring me into something I wasn't comfortable with. We tried to negotiate. I said we could let her stay for a week while we helped her secure something permanent, but she needed to respect our space, routines, and the fact that Alex needed consistency. At first, she agreed. However, almost immediately, things started going downhill. She would leave the kitchen a mess, let her dog roam unsupervised, and constantly interfere with our parenting. She would take Alex without asking, even try to feed him snacks we don't normally allow. I repeatedly told her that boundaries were necessary, but she brushed me off, saying, "I'm family. I don't need to follow your rules." Mark started defending her, saying I was too strict and that Emily was going through a rough patch. He suggested I relax and let her stay as long as she needed. I tried to compromise, but her behavior escalated. She started inviting friends over without asking, smoking in the apartment, which we don't allow, and even borrowed money from me without returning it. After 3 weeks of this, I had had enough. I told Mark that Emily needed to leave immediately because the situation was affecting Alex and our household dynamic. Mark reacted angrily, accusing me of being unsupportive and uncaring. He said I was overreacting and that we owed it to Emily to let her stay until she got a job. I argued that we had already been more than accommodating and that she was taking advantage of our kindness. We ended up having a huge fight. He accused me of being selfish and not valuing family. I said he was being naive and enabling someone who wasn't trying to help themselves. Eventually, I told him that if Emily didn't leave within 2 days, I would call a friend to help her find temporary housing because I couldn't continue living like this. Mark reluctantly agreed, but made it clear he was unhappy. Emily, of course, was upset and tried to guilt trip us by saying she had no one else and that Mark didn't care about her feelings. I stayed firm, explaining that family support doesn't mean sacrificing our home, stability, or our child's well-being. She left a few days later, and Mark has been distant since. He says I'm cold and unsympathetic. Our friends are split. Some say I was right to set boundaries, especially with a child in the house. Others say I could have handled it more gracefully or given Emily a bit more time. Mark keeps bringing it up and suggests that maybe I should rethink my stance on family. I feel guilty sometimes because I know she's struggling, but at the same time, our home and our child's routine had to come first. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay with us when she moved back to the city. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she asked me to change my entire life for it. So, a bit of background first. I, 28F, have a fairly busy life. I work full-time as a software developer, and I live about 200 miles from my hometown. I've always been close to my sister, Laura, 31F, and we've had a relatively normal sibling relationship. Occasional arguments, but nothing major. When she got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, about a year ago, I was genuinely happy for her. I even helped her pick out her dress, gave advice on vendors, and was generally supportive because I really do want her to have a beautiful wedding. Here's where things started to go off the rails. A couple of months ago, Laura sent me an email outlining the schedule of events and expectations for family members. At first, I thought it was cute and maybe a little over the top, but then I noticed something weird. She was essentially asking that I make a list of sacrifices to attend her wedding. I thought she was joking at first, but it became clear that she wasn't. The main issues were, she wanted me to fly to the wedding city a week early and stay with her and Mark at their Airbnb, even though the wedding is on a Saturday and I had work commitments. She said she needed me to help with last-minute prep and decorations, and that family presence was essential. She wanted me to dye my hair a very specific shade of blonde because it'll look better in the photos with my wedding colors. My hair has been dark brown my whole life, and I've never dyed it anything except subtle highlights. She asked me to follow a strict dress code that involved renting a couture dress that cost more than half my monthly rent. She said that it would look bad if I showed up in anything less. She specifically requested that I not bring my fiancé. We've been together for 3 years because it would clash with the wedding aesthetic, which was odd because Mark has been around since the engagement announcement and no one else was banned from attending with their partners. At this point, I was honestly shocked. I tried to talk to her on the phone, telling her that while I loved her and wanted to be there, these demands were not realistic for me. I told her I couldn't take a week off work, I couldn't afford the dress, I wasn't going to dye my hair, and it was unfair to ask me to leave my fiancé out. I expected some compromise or at least a little understanding. Instead, she got extremely defensive. She said I was being selfish, that I didn't care about her happiness, and that I was making her wedding about myself. We went back and forth for about 2 weeks. I even offered alternatives. I could come a day early to help with some small tasks, I could rent a dress within my budget, and I could style my hair in a way that matched her colors without dyeing it. But she refused everything, insisting that if I wasn't willing to meet these standards, I shouldn't come at all. Eventually, I told her that I couldn't attend under those conditions. I explained that I loved her, but I couldn't compromise my job, my relationship, or my personal appearance for a single event. She hasn't spoken to me since, and our parents are very upset with me. My mom keeps telling me that I need to put family first and be there for my sister no matter what. My dad says I should have at least tried harder to meet her demands. I've been feeling torn because on one hand, it feels wrong to skip my sister's wedding, but on the other hand, I feel like what she asked was unreasonable. I've never had a problem supporting family, but this felt less like support and more like control. Here's the thing. Since I refused, my sister has been posting a lot on social media about disappointed family and how some people only care about themselves, and several mutual friends have messaged me asking why I'm being difficult. Some of them think I'm in the wrong for not making sacrifices for family, while others say she's overreacting. I've tried reaching out multiple times to make peace, offering to celebrate with her in smaller ways, or even take her out for dinner before the wedding. But she either ignores me or says that my presence at the wedding isn't wanted. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she asked me to make unreasonable changes to my life. I feel like I'm being vilified for simply drawing boundaries, but part of me wonders if I really am being selfish. I love my sister and want her to be happy, but I also have my own life, and I feel like these requests were not just unreasonable, they were controlling. I also feel guilty for letting my parents down. I'm really hoping someone can help me figure out if I crossed a line here or if I'm justified in standing my ground. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after an incident during his bachelor party. So this is going to be long, but I need some perspective because my family is divided and even my friends are split. I, 32M, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F. We've always been close, and after she got engaged to Tom, 30M, I try to be supportive even though I didn't know him that well. Emily and I are pretty similar personality-wise, very organized, careful, and a bit sarcastic. Tom, on the other hand, is more of a live-in-the-moment kind of guy, which has caused some friction with Emily in the past, but nothing serious. Last month, Tom's bachelor party happened. I wasn't invited, which was fine, but Emily was, just as a guest for a short part of the evening. I had agreed to let the guys use my vacation house for the weekend, thinking it would be a controlled environment and that Emily would feel comfortable there. My vacation house is a modest two-bedroom place about a 45-minute drive from my city apartment. I explicitly told Tom that the house has rules. No pets, no smoking indoors, no excessive noise past 11 p.m., and no parties that would require extra cleanup beyond normal use. I also said I expected everything to be cleaned and taken care of because it's my property. When the bachelor party weekend came, I went to the house on Friday morning to make sure everything was ready. The house was spotless, and I left some snacks and drinks for them. I also told Emily that she could stay as long as she wanted on Saturday, but I wasn't planning to stay overnight. By Sunday morning, I got a call from Emily. She sounded frantic and said the house was trashed. She said that Tom and his friends had basically turned it into a full-blown party. There were empty bottles and cans everywhere. Some furniture was scratched, and there was even a small fire hazard because they tried to cook indoors on a grill they had brought in. Emily said she confronted Tom, but he brushed her off and said he didn't think it was that bad and that I was overreacting. When I arrived at the house, it was worse than I imagined. The living room carpet was soaked with spilled drinks, the kitchen counter was sticky, the bathroom had clogged drains, and there was a weird smell throughout. I spent 6 hours cleaning, throwing things away, and repairing minor damage. I didn't expect the house to be a museum, but I thought my instructions were clear. The next day, I told Emily I couldn't let Tom stay at my house anymore. I explained that the bachelor party incident showed that he couldn't respect boundaries or property. Emily got defensive and said I was overreacting, that it was a one-time thing, and that I should forgive him. I refused, saying that if he couldn't behave for a weekend in a house with very clear rules, he wasn't welcome in my home. She left upset, and since then, our communication has been tense. Emily tried to get me to compromise. She said he'd pay for any damages and that he was really sorry. I told her that's not the point. The issue isn't the money. It's trust and respect. I also mentioned that I feel like this could be a recurring problem if I let him stay, and I don't want my property to be at risk. Now, my parents are involved. They think I'm being too harsh and that I should forgive and forget because he's family soon. Some of my friends agree with me, saying that I'm within my rights to set boundaries. Others think I'm creating drama and that Emily is right. He made a mistake, apologized, and wants to make amends. I also want to mention that Tom has a history of being reckless. Emily has told me privately that he's had issues with alcohol and taking things too far at parties, and there have been minor incidents before, like a friend's car being keyed after a night out or losing a hotel room deposit. None of these were severe, but they were warning signs that he doesn't always think through consequences. I've offered alternatives. I said he could stay in a hotel, or that Emily and Tom could rent a different house for special occasions, but she insists that it's my house and that I should allow him in. I feel like this is a boundary I need to enforce, and I honestly worry about what could happen if I let him in again. The tension has spilled over into family gatherings. Emily doesn't speak to me unless she has to. My parents drop subtle hints about how family is supposed to stick together, and Tom has barely addressed me at all, probably because he knows I don't trust him. I'm starting to feel like I'm being painted as the villain for simply enforcing reasonable rules on my property. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house after the bachelor party fiasco. I feel like I'm protecting my property and my peace of mind, but my family thinks I'm being unreasonably rigid. I just want a space in my home that is respected, and I don't know if I'm overreacting. AITA for telling my sister she can't stay at my house after she kicked my dog. I, 28F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I have a stable job, a quiet apartment, and a small dog I rescued 3 years ago named Baxter. He's a medium-sized terrier mix, very shy around strangers, but incredibly affectionate once he warms up to someone. My sister, Emily, 26F, has always been more of a free spirit. She bounces between short-term jobs, moves every few months, and has a history of getting into conflicts with people or animals because she doesn't respect boundaries. We love each other, but our lifestyles couldn't be more different. About 2 weeks ago, Emily called me asking if she could stay at my place for a few days. She had gotten into a huge argument with her roommate, and she said she needed somewhere safe to crash until she figured out her next steps. I hesitated because I know how she is, but she sounded genuinely stressed, so I agreed. I set some ground rules. No guests without telling me, no drinking in my apartment, and importantly, no bothering Baxter. She agreed to all of it. The first night went fine. Emily seemed a little on edge, but she stayed in my guest room, ate my food, and didn't touch Baxter. The next day, she came out of the room complaining about how boring my place was and how my dog was annoying. I told her Baxter was shy and needed space, and that if she wanted to interact with him, she should do so gently. She said she would. I trusted her. That evening, I was in the living room watching TV when I heard Baxter growl. I turned around just in time to see Emily kick him across the room. I froze. Baxter yelped and ran under the couch. I was horrified. I screamed at her, asking why she would do that. Her response was, "He was sniffing me too much. I don't like dogs. He's mine to kick if he bothers me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried to explain that kicking a dog is not only cruel, but also illegal in some places, and that Baxter trusts me and relies on me for safety. She rolled her eyes and muttered that I was overreacting. I asked her to leave immediately, but she refused, saying she didn't have anywhere else to go and accusing me of being dramatic. I called my parents for advice. They said she was stressed and maybe she shouldn't be judged too harshly, but they also agreed that she couldn't stay if she was harming animals. I even offered to call a local shelter or friend to help her find a temporary place, but she insisted she would stay in my apartment. I felt trapped. The next day, I woke up early and told her firmly that she needed to pack her things and leave. She shouted that I was being controlling and selfish. I didn't back down. She left in a huff, but texted me for the next few days, saying things like, "You ruined our relationship," and "I can't believe you kicked me out over a dog." Some of my mutual friends have messaged me, saying that maybe I overreacted and that Emily is going through a rough time, but I feel like kicking a dog is a hard boundary that shouldn't be crossed. Since then, Emily has posted on social media about family drama without mentioning the full story, painting herself as the victim. My parents are trying to stay neutral, which I understand, but I feel like they're downplaying what she did. Baxter is visibly anxious now, hiding more and refusing to eat if he hears the sound of boots or a bag being moved, which makes me feel guilty for letting her stay even one night. I've thought a lot about it, and yes, I could have said no up front, but I honestly thought setting clear rules would be enough. I did everything I could to make sure both Emily and Baxter were safe. Now I'm questioning if I was too harsh or if I should try to reconcile. I love my sister, but I can't forgive someone who hurt an innocent animal under my care. So, AITA for kicking my sister out after she kicked my dog. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.